Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this campus conversation. Our topic today is Beyond Words, CMU Libraries Commitment to Sustainability and Critical Cataloging. I'm Allison Smalley. I work in advancement here on campus at CMU. I have a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dean Kathy Irwin. If you have not done so, please feel free to introduce yourself through the chat and your name, where you're joining us from. Sometimes it's fun to see how far people are from campus, and your year of graduation or your relationship to Central Michigan University. We did mute everybody as you entered from the chat, from the waiting room, just to help with any feedback issues that we may experience. We do ask that you enter your questions through the chat during the presentation so we can stay on our schedule. And then we have time after the presentation is over to address the questions, and then kind of open it up for another like Q&A, and you can feel free to come off mute and raise your hand after at that point. If you'd like to turn your videos on, that's great. We love to see your lovely faces. Also, we are recording this session. We do send the recording out to anyone who has registered for the event. Sometimes it happens that people cannot attend the day of. So we like to make sure that we have this available for anybody or in the future. Also, I will, like I said, send the recording to everybody that is attending today and that has registered, along with a survey, if you don't mind completing that. So at that, I guess that it concludes my notes, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Allison, for inviting us to present today. And it's so nice to see the folks attending. We appreciate your interest and time that you're spending with us this afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce two of our librarians who are going to highlight two key initiatives here at CMU Libraries. Marian Matyn is archivist in the Clark Historical Library and associate professor here at the CMU Libraries. She will discuss critical cataloging and reparative description and how that project supports DEI initiatives here at CMU. Next, Kucera, manager of library systems, will discuss sustainability efforts at the libraries. Both presenters will speak up to 15 minutes each, and we will have time for your questions once both presentations conclude. So again, as Allison mentioned, you can put your questions in the chat as you think about them, and we'll grab those for the discussion at the end. When I was thinking about this presentation today, I thought, libraries collect books, we collect manuscripts. Our biggest brand to the members of the public as a library is that we're about books. And I think that is true. We collect words in many ways, but we also act. And that's one of the reasons I was thinking about this title of Beyond Words. I hope that you see and that we are going beyond just collecting words, but also to taking actions. Our words have a lot of power. Our words create the worlds that we live in. What we read creates the world that we live in, the discussions we have. And when we want to make our communities more efficient, more effective, and more inclusive, we do that through conversation, through words. But the real power comes in taking action. And I think that both of these projects that Marian and Anne will be speaking about today demonstrate that. So now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Marian. Thank you.
All right. I hope you all can see that PowerPoint. Allison, not if you can see it. Okay, excellent. So
Marian, we see your notes slide.
Yeah. Hold on just a minute. Yeah, why is that? Shouldn't be doing that. Hold on just a minute. I didn't do this before. Hold on, let me share my other screen. I'm sorry. That would be easier to do. Nope, it's okay. Can you see it now, just the one screen? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, sometimes it flips. All right, so I'm presenting about how and why critical cataloging and reparative description support the DEI goals at CMU and globally. And just for a minute, just breathe in all those tulips and think about spring. So I'm Marian. I'm the archivist in the Clark Historical Library and faculty in the CMU Libraries, and I also serve as a subject bibliographer or liaison librarian for the combined departments of history, world language, and culture. I'm going to give you just a little brief intro to what we do to help you understand the full impact of this project. So what is an archivist? People say, are you an anarchist? Are you an archaeologist? Are you an architect? So I always have to explain, just briefly, I focus on working with the primary sources. And what are those? That is the raw, unedited historical information that comes direct from a creator. This can be a person, a family, an organization, a unit of CMU. It is uninterpreted, unpublished by authors or historians. Primary sources can include examples like letters, diaries, scrapbooks, photographic materials, minutes, digital images, moving film, among others. But the very important thing is they are evidence of what people said, did, thought, wanted, felt. Okay, so I focus on working with those materials, organizing them, processing them, describing them, making them accessible and available to researchers, both in person and online, digitally, which means globally. And I train and mentor and supervise students here to have experiential, hands-on learning experiences with those materials. So how do you find information in a library or an archives? Maybe you hunt and peck around on the shelves. Maybe you have used or still use a paper library catalog. Or maybe you've evolved to using a library smart search like the one on the right from CMU. Whatever your strategy is, you need quality appropriate description, which is critical for you to access informational resources that you desire. This description must be accurate, complete, and current. It usually includes author, title, subjects. It might include publishing and copyright information. For primary sources, which can be anything from one letter to hundreds and hundreds of boxes or millions of digital images, we create a finding aid, a descriptive guide that describes the collection and the creator and helps you find the information. And it provides detailed, important contextual information about relationships. Why did the creator create these different materials? How are they related to each other? How are the other people in the collection related to the creator? And you need to know that to be able to use those materials. All of this description for books, for primary sources, it must follow professional standards, ethics, and best practices. And all of these evolve over time with the systems we use, which also evolve. And just like our vocabulary and our knowledge and our expectations change, so do our professional standards. So what exactly is critical cataloging and reparative description? Here are two professional definitions. The Code of Cataloging Ethics describes critical cataloging and description as focusing on understanding and changing how knowledge organizations codify systems of oppression. That's pretty heavy. but give me a minute and we'll talk about that a little more. The Society of American Archivists, which is our national professional organization, describes it as the remediation of practice or data that exclude, silence, harm, or mischaracterize marginalized people in the data created or used by archivists to identify or characterize archival resources. So to sum up, we're talking about updating outdated, disrespectful description of informational resources. In the library and the archival professions, we acknowledge the existence of this ongoing problem that has been centuries in the making, really, and the harm and the disrespectful that disrespectful description can cause people. And we are committed to changing that description to be more appropriate and respectful. The national professions acknowledge that most librarians and archivists are white with a white perspective. Descriptive practices in the Library of Congress classification system reflect this. Description can cause people real harm and trauma. My very first year at CMU, which was a while ago, a gentleman came in from the local tribe and he cried in the reading room in front of me. I have never forgotten that. It has affected me. And at that time, we weren't really sure what all we had to do or how we might go about it to affect positive change. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, is part of our professional ethical practice. It's part of CMU. We need to listen to and learn from our community members in order to create positive change and good description, to be respectful. There are multiple approaches that are in progress right now, nationally and internationally, to address some of these issues. Some people might say, why don't you just ditch the unpleasant stuff? Get rid of it. We can't do that with primary sources. They are evidence direct from the creators of what they said, felt, and did. It is historical evidence. And all of that is part of the broad, messy historical record. Our professional ethics forbids us from doing this. And in order to build trust with our community members and our researchers, we can't do it. And we need to be transparent about what we are doing. So the CMU Libraries Critical Cataloging and Reparative Description Project really kicked off in January 21 with Melissa James and Laura Thompson and I. We had a number of goals. We brought our project idea to the dean who supported it. Among our goals were to develop a general statement which acknowledged the potentially harmful materials in our collections, to develop a priority list of the known problematic subject headings, terms, topics, and collections to address, to create processes and workflows, to listen to and learn from community and cultural experts. And in the process, we collected a lot of resource information to help us. We documented what we did. We were transparent. And one of our other goals is to publicly share about our project to help others. Our project aligns with CMU and libraries' DEI goals. One of CMU's goals is conducting the activities of the university in a way that welcomes the diversity into our community. And one of the library's goals is strengthening community engagement. Our actions as a university, as a profession, must reflect our verbal commitment to our goals and our rich cultural diversity. While I am not a cultural expert, I can work towards respectful description by educating myself and learning and listening to others and respecting their opinion. And all of this work will increase accessibility and use of our resources, I believe. And that includes global research from online students, faculty, and researchers. There are many ways we could approach this, and we have limitations on our resources. So we had to focus in on what we thought we could do, where we could start to make the most difference. There were 3 of us doing this work on top of our other assigned duties. We decided to handle Library of Congress subject headings only. Now, within that, there's issues. For example, we can't change historic and legal names or titles. If you're aware of the Civil War, African-American soldiers at the time fought in the US colored troops. That's an official name. It's from the time period, but it's legal and it's official, and we cannot change that name. Or perhaps you may have heard of how white people named a group of multiple tribal people the 5 civilized tribes. They didn't call themselves that. White people did. That is another official name that we cannot change, but we can change how it is described. We also decided not to change the descriptions of resources the library links to, but does not own, because that would be making decisions for the owning library. They have to make their own decisions. We decided to start with changing Indigenous descriptions. And part of this is because the Clark Historical Library has the largest group of Indigenous collections in the state of Michigan. So we decided to change the Library of Congress subject heading, Indians of North America, any subject headings that begin with that, and to change it to the more inclusive, more accepted today, Indigenous peoples of North America. Now, it's not just like, okay, we're going to do this. Millions of changes just happened. Library of Congress subject headings are complex and complicated. The catalog records reflect evolving practices in many, many catalogers over time. For each change we want to make, we have to look at a sample of the materials with that subject heading and conduct research for related terms or preferred terms by tribal community members. We discuss it. In some cases, we've asked community members for guidance. And all of that knowledge, we might take one of several options. We might change the Library of Congress subject heading. We might add additional topical subject headings. We might add geographical subdivisions to subject headings to make sure that people understand it's for a specific location or a specific group of people. And we do that by adding relevant tribal or community names. All of this provides more accurate, richer, respectful description and more points of access for researchers. And we document and we follow patterns of our change as appropriate. Now, in 2 years, we changed 27 Library of Congress subject headings, and this included time for us to figure out what we were doing and how to go about it best. This impacted over 10,500 bibliographic or catalog records. And of that, 8,920 were headings that began prior to this project with Indians of North America, and now begin with Indigenous peoples of North America. Now, we have a lot of future work to do. We just started. It's the tip of the iceberg. We have 2 new project members who are just starting. We need to work more on the Indigenous Library of Congress subject headings, and there's many other minority groups or marginalized people who are in our collections, including LGBTQ and disability topics. We also need to update descriptions in those finding aids. Remember I mentioned those? And we need to gather feedback. We believe that our work is going to increase respectful global community. The 3 of us presented multiple presentations at state, regional, and national levels, and we have a book chapter that will soon be published. And this will help educate and encourage other professionals, especially those with Indigenous description. This work can be very overwhelming. How do I start? What do I do? How am I going to go about it? So we're all working together as a profession to learn and grow. This has led to continued ongoing positive relationships with the Saginaw Chippewa tribe and the Zebewing Cultural Center staff. And the online description is visible and searchable, again, globally impacting researchers. And I believe this has a very high potential to increase awareness of our efforts in the collections, as well as their use, and probably more manuscript collection donations. When we presented at ALA, one of the people listening to us very wisely said, critical cataloging and reparative description is the work of generations. That just blew me away because yes, it's true. If you think of all the people who have cataloged, even since 1900 in some way, shape, or form. And all of that work we're now reviewing. That's the work of generations. Okay. So we ended our ALA presentation with this little positive blip here, which I really liked. It's very true of a lot of things, and it's very true of this kind of work. I wanted to pay tribute to my prior colleagues, Melissa and Laura, who part of this presentation is from our joint presentations, and they were thrilled I was doing this and gave their permission. And here's my contact information. And I look forward to your questions. And thank you for letting me present to you.
Okay, I'm unmuting. And now I'm looking for the share. There it is. Now I'm looking for my notes. All right. Hello, everybody. I am going to talk about sustainability at CMU Libraries. My name is Ann Kucera, and I'm the manager of library systems here at CMU Libraries. I usually work on projects where we're going to change something, either in the building or most often online. We make a lot of changes online. And I'm interested in making sure that as we change, we consider how to be more sustainable and we incorporate sustainability into our decisions. So in other words, if we're going to change anyway, why not make it sustainable? Being more sustainable is in alignment with CMU's strategic plan to ensure institutional sustainability. And in addition, the library has current sustainability goals to identify our current strengths and identify new opportunities for becoming more sustainable. We, as libraries, we are inherently sustainable. We create efficient systems for sharing books and other materials. And when we asked CMU library employees to create a list of sustainable and climate-friendly practices, we quickly named over 25 activities and programs. Along with providing access to books, articles, and other materials, we do lots of recycling, everything from office paper to batteries to old electronics. And we've almost completely switched to LED lighting in the building. And we've been involved with these activities for years and sometimes decades. More recently, we've looked for partnerships to help us become more sustainable. We found support and encouragement from two different organizations. Central Sustainability at CMU is a platform dedicated to making the CMU community more sustainable through projects, policy, and programming. And the Sustainable Libraries Initiative empowers library leaders to advance environmentally sound, socially equitable, and economically feasible practices to intentionally address climate change and co-create thriving communities. Both of these groups use a slightly different definition of sustainability, but both see sustainability as multifaceted. So both of them see an environmental aspect, social equity aspects, and economic feasibility. Those things are all part of a sustainable organization and sustainable activities. So there's a systems approach that you would take, and when something is truly sustainable, it is going to acknowledge the interconnecting parts of the system. So when we reflected on this definition of sustainability that included being socially responsible, economically feasible, and environmentally sound, we realized that CMU Libraries also participates in many other activities related to sustainability. And one example is the Michigan Shared Print Initiative, also called MySpy. It is a collaboration among 13 academic libraries in Michigan Each library agrees to keep copies of a selection of books that aren't checked out very often. And that makes it possible for the rest of the libraries to remove their copies of those titles. This frees up shelf space, so each library can either grow their print collection without adding additional shelving, or they can remove shelving and repurpose the space for students to do studying or maybe different learning configurations. The books are still available to anyone in the state through interlibrary loan, which serves the social equity aspect of sustainability. And then the reduction in the need for shelving serves the environmental and economic aspects of sustainability. And as I said earlier, CMU's most recent strategic plan highlights institutional sustainability as one of 4 priorities. So as we're thinking of how to align the library goals with this priority, we're considering long and short-term projects. We've partnered with CMU's Office of Information Technology to measure the energy use of our computers. We have over 300 computers in the library for students to use. They are left on with the monitors in a sleep mode until somebody uses them. And we've made this decision with student convenience in mind. All they have to do is walk up and jiggle the mouse and it's ready to go. So we're collecting data about how much energy a computer uses with our current setup. And we're also going to test how much energy a computer uses if it's in a hibernate mode and somebody has to push a button or do something additional to get it turned on. And we'll compare the data, the 2 scenarios, to see if there's significant energy savings. And if there is, then we will gather input from students about the trade-offs between the energy savings and the convenience. Another aspect of sustainability is resilience. And in this presentation, I'm going to define resilience as the ability to recover physically or emotionally after a change or incident. And I'm thinking of both personal and organizational resilience. They're both important. The founder of the sustainability and sustainable is hard to say a lot of times, just so you know. The founder of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative that I mentioned earlier published a book in 2018 called Sustainable Thinking, Ensuring Your Library's Future in an Uncertain World. Aldrich asserts that having a strong, her name's Rebecca Smith Aldrich, and she asserts that having a strong community is key to resilience. In her book, she discusses her experience at a workshop she was attending, and this workshop was to learn more about sustainability. And when these attendees were asked to rank 10 resilient design principles that the Resilient Design Institute was giving the workshop, almost everyone agreed that out of the 10 design principles, that having a strong community was the most important. So that's bringing me to my next thing that the library is doing. We are helping to create a strong community and strong community members at CMU Libraries. The managers are participating in Conversations Worth Having training to enhance our skills in having effective conversations. An important aspect of the training is learning about appreciative inquiry, which seeks to identify what's working and then build upon it. So notice that is where we started with our sustainability work, was to identify all the ways that the library is succeeding in sustainability and then build from there. So as far as what's next, we know that being sustainable and resilient is an ongoing activity. We plan to strengthen our partnerships with both Central Sustainability and the Sustainability Libraries Initiative. And as we learn more about sustainable practices, we will more easily recognize opportunities to make sustainable decisions that provide long-term benefits for our users. I have some references and resources in the slides, which I think are going to be forwarded to everybody, and my contact information. And I will stop sharing so that we can have a chat.
Thank you, Marian and Anne. I always learn so much from you, and I think I know what's going on in the libraries. And for whatever reason, oh, there we go. There's my camera. I'm like, why is my camera not working? Marian, I have a question for you just to kind of kick things off. You know, the work that you and your colleagues are working on here at our libraries and collectively across the US and the world is overwhelming. And so I'm curious, how do you decide, what you're going to do next? I know you have two new colleagues. Laura and Melissa have moved on to other institutions and new roles, which is exciting for them and sad for us. But we have, new colleagues here. I'm just curious what you're thinking the group here at CMU might work on in the next 6 to 12 months.
We are nowhere close
Yeah,
to being done with Indigenous subject headings.
yeah.
I don't know if you knew this, but like for an example, there are Indigenous ballerinas that are world famous. I really didn't know that. Like I found that out doing this project. And I've also learned more than I could ever have imagined possible about basket makers and baskets, which come in all shapes, sizes, materials, formats, methods of construction by all different kinds of people. And so we're going to finish Indigenous. In the conferences that I've gone to, the primary source collections in each archives are very unique. So there are some that just focus on like Chicano women or LGBTQ or whatever. And so the archivists there are focusing on the collections that they have that are the focus of the largest part of their collection, or materials that really haven't been used or for whatever reason, right? A lot of people, it's something really close and dear to their heart. And so I think with all of us doing this and sharing our information and coming up with better descriptors or ways to change or create new subject headings, every year there's going to be longer lists of all these better, different, more appropriate, optional subject headings. And there's also debate within the communities too. Not everybody might agree, hey, this is a subject heading we need for this group, or we need multiple ones. So it's really fascinating. But yeah, a lot of people are very involved, and everybody is saying, yes, this is really, really challenging. So there you go.
Right. And so when you're actually changing a subject heading that the Library of Congress might have created, I know there's a process to go through that, but once it is approved, then all libraries can use that language because we do something called copying the record into our local catalogs. And if you are making changes at the local catalog record and it's not reflected in the shared system, how do you communicate about that?
Mostly through presentations. So our plan was to come up with a list, like we were hoping probably by the end of last year. And well, I was hoping Melissa and Laura were going to be here a little longer. And then at the end of the year, we would compile a list and send it off. So that is something that one of the new members of the team has already brought up. There are organizations and there's processes that you can do that with. But I think a lot of people are changing subject headings now and then going to send a list later. That's kind of the feel I got, when they have enough done.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
have a question for Marian. Actually, I have two. What would you say is the most difficult or most challenging part of your initiative? And also, we have talked about that there is a process, obviously, for title changes and such. How long does it take? Like, what sorry, what
That's okay.
how much time would you say it takes for like something to change and from like the start to the finish? Because obviously this is time consuming. I was just curious what that kind of looks like.
Okay. The hardest thing really is trying to figure out how to get started. and you have to be adaptable.
Sure.
That was from my perspective. It's because it's very overwhelming. Like it's not, I'm not going to fix everything. All I can do is like start on a good path that other people can follow and see what we did. And if they change their minds and want to do it different, that's up to them. Right. I'm laying I look at it as like what we started. We're just laying a pathway. We're starting the path. Okay. How long does it take? That really depends. The Library of Congress, like if you submit something, months probably, and there might be debate. And it could become political and even get reversed, because that did happen and it was extremely nasty and unpleasant. And for us changing something, some of them are much more obvious. It's like, oh, okay, we think this seems like an easy change, right? And then there are some like the 5 civilized tribes that took us weeks. Like we were working on this like an hour a week or something every week to start with. And all 3 of us went and conducted research for like 3 weeks and came back and said, okay, this is a real doozy. Like, here's some things we can do. There might be some other things we can do, but at this point, we need to focus on what we can do here. So I can't directly answer that question specifically, sorry.
But no, that helps. Thank you. It definitely gives perspective.
Oh, Anne added in the comment that for reparative cataloging technology as a factor, we linked data is, I don't know, I'm not the best person to explain linked data, but it's a revolution really in library catalogs and how the user can explore a concept across platforms and institutions and formats. And again, I'm not the best person to describe it, but yes, I do think technology can be our friend. Marian and yesterday was talking to me about term circles. I wasn't going to bring that up, but it comes to mind because we were talking about there's not necessarily one word for something. There's many words for the same thing, and different populations may use different words for the same thing. Soda pop comes to mind, right? Is it a Coke? Is it a soda? Is it a pop? Is it a fizzy? I have no idea. Anyway, so like there's more than one word for something, and they're all acceptable, and they're all entry points to research and learning opportunities. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, we don't all have the same resources. I mean, there are people still using paper card catalogs, and there are people using systems that we probably used 10 years ago. And there are probably people using more advanced systems as well. There's people in one library, there's people in one library that's part of a humongous system, and you need representatives from all those departments and units and social and community groups to weigh in, and they don't all agree. So we do what we can do, and we try to make it better.
I have a question / comment, I guess. Well, first of all, this is all really fascinating, and I think it's an example of things that, at least I know, like for me personally, I don't think about all of the thought, right, and all of the work that goes into all of this, and probably just take a lot of it for granted. So it's really, really neat. I was wondering, the idea of critical cataloging, like how long have people been thinking about this? And what struck me when you were talking specifically about some of the things you're working on with say like the Clark's collections and your presentation at conferences, are there ways or things that you have done where you think it's creating sort of like a leadership role, or like where the Clark and therefore CMU in presenting some of what you're doing is kind of blazing a trail for others? So I guess that's kind of a 2-part question. Like, how long have people been really talking about this? And then in what ways are you kind of leading in this work based on what you're doing here?
Is that Megan?
Yeah.
Tell who's speaking. Okay. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Thank you for that question. So at least in archives, we've been aware for a long, long time about these collections and the impact they can have. And the question always was, What can we do about it? Because we have limited subject headings available. And so I think the whole movement really strongly kicked off with during COVID, especially with Black Lives Matter. That was when and the whole debate about the Library of Congress subject heading illegal aliens and the Dartmouth college students' protests of that. If you want to learn more about that, just Google Dartmouth illegal aliens and you'll learn a whole lot, okay? And that was a situation where the Library of Congress eventually changed it, and then they got political kickback and then reneged on changing it, okay? So one of the things, a lot of people are doing various things, various approaches, okay? But one of the things that we did that was very different was how Melissa Janes manipulated the records in the current system we have called Alma Ex Libris. And that was very unique. And that was one of the reasons why we kept getting asked to present, was because we were technologically using the system in a way to help us do this. And so it was a part of that was technological and new ways of approaching using the system. And like I said, not everybody has the system we have, so everybody's doing different things. But people were kind of shocked and amazed. And that was some of the ways the system worked to search for information and then to do batch changes or to change a group of identified material to change one descriptor in, say, 8,000 records at once, instead of us having to go through and individually do it, which is what I thought we were going to have to do. And a lot of people did. So some of this highlights the skill of the individuals behind the scenes who don't always get recognized or understood for what they're doing, and the whole systems, libraries have evolved and the systems we use have evolved, and our knowledge and skills have to evolve to keep up. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you.
So Anne, I want to ask a question of your presentation as well. And I was struck by how you wove into your presentation about partnerships and innovation. And there was, gosh, I think, was it 2020? It was before the pandemic got going. In the libraries, we were looking at organizational culture and again, assessing what is or what was at that time and where we wanted to shift our culture to. And there was a strong, that assessment showed that our library employees at the time wanted to, they were experiencing a collaborative environment, but they wanted more collaboration and they wanted more opportunities for creativity and innovation. And I think both of these projects that Marian and Anne are talking about today do that. So I'm just curious, Anne, how do you go about recognizing opportunities? A lot of times we think about solving problems. We're all pretty good problem solvers, but when it comes to sustainability, I think we're not just solving problems, we're looking for those opportunities. So how do you weigh and balance and decide you're going to do the computer energy project? And I'm even going to want to ask a little bit about what are you thinking of for the next year or two as potential projects?
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, I think for, as I was thinking more and more about that aspect of community and resilience and how important community is, community is really important for change in any situation or improvement or innovation. So why did we start with computers? Because I'm the manager of library systems and I have a great relationship with the people in the Office of Information Technology, right? So we're sitting in a room and I can say, hey, what do you think? And they say, yeah, we've got some students who would like this experience. So it really starts from having the strong community. So I feel like that is probably our number one goal, is to start having sustainability in mind as we talk to people across campus, as we talk to each other, to see kind of what bubbles up to the surface. I did watch a webinar where somebody said, you know, we want to make sure we're doing things that are impactful. We don't want to, you know, if we're going to spend a lot of energy to save a little, that's not as great as, obviously these things take energy and commitment and time. So we want to get a good maybe return, right, on our investment of time. So I think learning more about what does have a good investment. And I think this one is just kind of to get us started, right? How do we measure things? How can we involve students? So yeah, in the next couple of years, I see ourselves as learning and then getting the ability to take advantage once we learn what's going to work. I guess in my personal life, I've learned that when my air conditioner breaks, I'm going to get a heat pump, because I've kind of been hearing from here and there that a heat pump is a great way to go. It will be it won't get me through the whole winter. I still need a furnace, but in that fall, spring time, it's way more efficient than using your furnace at that time. So I guess that's the kind of thing we want to do, is make sure we have the knowledge before the emergency happens.
Do we have any other questions for Anne or Marian? Well, thanks again, Allison, for giving us this opportunity, and for all of our attendees. I hope you found this presentation interesting. I know I can kind of get geeked out about library things, but that's my job, right? And so for the rest of you for showing up, I hope it gives you a little glimpse behind the scenes of some of the things that we find important and interesting to be working on. Allison, I guess the microphone is yours.
Sure. Thank you so much for
And
being
thanks,
here.
Anne and Marian.
Yes, and for your presentation and the work you did to share all this information with us. We very much appreciate it. I just look for an email from me tomorrow with the recording link and survey and such. And I hope everyone has a great day.